So starting with the question, I asked my students, how often do you really understand why you earned the grade you did? They looked at me like, huh? What do you even mean? Most had never been asked a question like that before. Meet my 10th graders. They're the kind of class that doesn't even seem real sometimes. They're funny, they're diligent, they're hardworking, they're intelligent. Right? They make it easy for a teacher to want to try something new. This year, for us, that something new involved grading and feedback. I was tired of working so hard with grades for it to be so meaningless for them. I was tired of doing the same thing and getting the same result. I was tired of insanity. Think we can relate? I've always believed that grades need to communicate learning and feedback. If they're not transparent, if they're not meaningful, that's a problem. And maybe they're just a problem no matter what. So I decided we needed to put learning and growth ahead of letters and numbers. And once you remove that punitive power of grades, learning is not restricted by time or place. So I asked my students to revise everything and anything with extra help. Our grades began to really represent what we know it can do. It wasn't enough. Revision isn't enough without the tough conversations about what grading really means. We need to talk about how do we help our students understand what their grades really mean? How do we help them want to revise and want to do better and want to grow? So I decided to de-weaponize learning. Grades should not be a weapon that teachers hold over students. Instead, assessment should be meaningful and about feedback and growth above all else. But this wasn't just about me. My students had to own it too. Together, we worked on ways to communicate more effectively. There's power in grades, but that power belongs to the learner. And with that power comes responsibility. So first what we had to figure out was how to manage the workflow of submissions and revisions. Enter technology and Google Forms. By completing an assignment submission form, students had to justify their late and revised work. They had to explain what they did better, why they deserve the credit. They also emailed me to let me know they submitted their work. From there we moved to self-assessment and reflection. Students evaluated their own progress in their units. They graded themselves with established criteria and understandings that we came to together. They had to think critically about their growth, learning, and grades. Next, we move forward to student reflection and creation. I went from the creator to the facilitator to an observer, as my students worked together on Google Classroom to design their own assessment criteria. They built the assessments, they built the criteria of what we should ask in our reflections. But always the most important question came back to this one. What questions do you have? Open, metacognitive, reflective questions like these, always are more informative than the grading. And that's where we saw the most growth and insight. We went low-tech too at times. Students used big post-its to design their own rubrics. We discussed what the qualities of good writing were, what it really looked like, and instead of just applying rubrics, they created them. They took the ownership, they had the power. When it came time to apply the rubrics for peer editing, right, they wanted to print them from Google Classroom. I said, okay, but first I made them argue why that would be more effective. They had to prove the value of the paper. They had to reflect on each other's work. They had to show the growth, the feedback, and the learning. The research backs up these strategies too. High-impact strategies on student achievement include the teacher estimates of student functioning, metacognitive strategies, self-questioning, self-reported grades, formative feedback, and more. It's all right here. So are the Common Core standards. Don't even try to read it. You don't need to. Just trust me. There are 11 of the 22 college and career readiness anchor standards for writing, speaking, listening, and language right here in this work as well. Now, throughout all this, I've had to reflect. And what I've realized is that technology can make the learning visible, it can enhance student voice, and most of all, it can help communicate the data about learning like never before. So in my classroom, we continue this work with reflection and self-assessment. And I asked my students a big open-ended question last week for progress reports. I said, what should your grade be? Back it up, evaluate it, support your arguments, convince me that you are right. And they did. Here are their scores. Here are their scores. Now, about half of my students had the scores matching what I gave them. 16 kids, 7 of them, exact same grade I would have given them. Another 7 were within 5 points. The ones who weren't, the reflections told me why and helped me figure out what I need to do to get them to where they need to move. This isn't just about technology, and it's certainly not just about grades. It's about students, it's about learning, and it's about relationships. when we put the reflection and feedback before the grade, we understand more about students and their learning,